Hello and welcome to the Monday Show here on the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove and joined as usual by our Newcastle United editor Aaron Stokes. The Premier League is kicked off and what a start for Newcastle United, thumping Aston Villa 5-1 at St James's Park. A double from Alexander Isak, debut goals for Sandro Tonali and Harvey Barnes, and another from Callum Wilson. Blew Unai Emery's men away. United were comfortable on the ball, slick with their passing, quick with their pressing, clinical in front of goal. It really was a top-class display. We're going to look back on all the key points, plus revisit Newcastle's interest in Tierney and Marco Cucurella. I'm going to sing a love song about Joe Linton, and Aaron is going to talk up Alexander Isak. Not that the Swede needs it. Aaron, apart from the football, you had a good weekend?
Yeah, cracking. I mean, it was made even better by the football. I mean, it was just great to be back at St James's Park, wasn't it? Missed it, really missed it. Didn't realise how much I had. And then, I mean, who saw that coming? Everybody went into it. It's going to be a tight game. Two teams on the up. Absolutely class from there for Newcastle.
Worlds apart. I know it's only one game. We don't want to get over excited, but it was a fantastic performance from Newcastle United. We had the e-ticket system underway at St James's Park on Saturday. It seemed to go well, but obviously they've improved the signal around the ground. But I'm cursing it. I'm cursing it because I got a picture at kickoff on Saturday. My little girl dressed in an Aston Villa baby bib. I can't tell you the fury that ran through my veins.
Hang on, you're gonna have to elaborate. That can't have been your doing or Lil's doing.
Of course, it wasn't my doing. But anyone that listened to the match preview in the week, I explained to John Gibson that my father-in-law is an Aston Villa fan, and he bought some Aston Villa bibs. And I tell you what, right? I left the house. I thought I don't need to say it. I don't need to say it to my wife. Do not allow our baby to have those Aston Villa bibs put on when I'm not here. I thought I don't need to say it, and then I got the message through. I got the photo through, and I thought I really wish the signal
from the game
to take it off. Yeah, I missed the opening half. I really wish that they hadn't improved the signal and you can get reception now. But as raging as I was, I'm putting down the awful decision of my father-in-law as the motivation for Eddie Howe and his squad to thump Villa.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Look. It didn't look like it was going to be possible for Newcastle United to kick on from last season, and they've literally just picked up where they left off. They don't look like they've even had a break over the summer. I know we'll speak more about it later, but how fit do they look? I mean, they're going 75, 80 minutes into a game, and they're looking so fresh. Yeah, a real good marker for the start of the season.
Yeah. Before we get into analysing a bit of the game, should we whisper it or shall we sing it? Shall we shout it from the rooftop?
I mean, you've got it in big capital letters on your notes. I think we should whisper it. I think I'm always the one to try and keep my feet on the ground on this podcast. I think we need to whisper it. But
say we are top of the league. Say we are top of the league. Let's get excited about it. I mean, Man United will probably win 6 or 7 tonight against Wolves. But yeah, enough of that for now. Let's start with something serious. Let's start about Sandro Tonali. His debuts go. It wasn't too shabby. Now, I did ask our listeners for some words to describe Tonali's debut performance. We had immense, we had fantastico, sumptuous, and cosmic.
Cosmic. That's good. Out of this world, eh?
It was, wasn't it? But it just seems everyone is falling in love with Tonali. The other one I had actually was surprising. Yeah. And initially I was like, But it was surprising because I didn't have him starting. Did you?
Well, this is the first point that I knew I was going to make on this podcast today. This is why Eddie Howe has paid the big bucks, because I did not see one person saying in the week Sandro Tonali's going to start. Everyone was going, Longstaff's probably suiting this team a bit more. People were obviously calling for Anderson to start. Eddie Howe, by his own admission, was saying that Tonali probably wasn't, ready. We all saw what he was like in America. He was maybe a bit off the pace. So it was surprising in a sense because nobody actually thought that he was going to pull that performance out the bag this early.
And it was fantastic. And what was really good about it was that he just looked at home. Like we were all worried about how well he would settle in. But 66 touches, 48 out of 54 passes complete, which was 89%, and a goal on his debut. And he could have had a second as well.
Yeah. I think for me, in terms of debuts, could you have really had a better one? I think from minute one, he was just absolutely spot on. Brilliant to get that goal so early. Perfect late run at the box, as you say. Could have had a second moments later. But if you look at each of the goals after that, he plays a part in pretty much all of them. He plays a really good part in that Isak goal, playing the ball into the box. He plays, sort of the pre-assist for for Callum Wilson's in the second half. Everywhere on the pitch, absolutely selfless work on and off the ball. We've got to keep our feet on the ground. It's only been one game. I know they're top of the league. I know they've looked like they've signed the best midfielder in the world. But as I've just said, as statements go and as an early marker, if that's what he's like after a couple of Eddie Howe training sessions and a couple of pre-season games, what's he going to be like in a year or two?
Tim says he absolutely bossed it. What I loved about it as well, about his performance, well, not so much his performance, just something a little bit quirky. He had his shirt tucked in for the entirety of the game.
You know what it is? I was just about to say that. I was going to say that was probably my favourite part of his performance. Proper old school midfielder, isn't it, when he took your shirt in?
He looked slightly better than Lee Cattermole.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Don't think that was who he was trying to, emulate.
But yeah, you can just tell that. I just said to the guy sitting next to me on Saturday, so you can just tell in school, he was top of the class, but he was also there a good 45 minutes before class kicked off with an apple on the desk for the teacher, just like a proper goody two shoes. But he just looked, I don't know, he just looked like a pin.
Yeah, he did. And everybody always said, he got so many early comparisons with Andrea Pirlo when he was in Italy, purely because they both had the same style of hair. And, that was quickly dismissed, and people said he doesn't play like Pirlo. But actually, I think he does. I think he's got that arrogance of Pirlo. Pirlo used to strut around that pitch knowing he was the best. And there was times on Saturday where Tonali just sprayed a ball out to the left for Barnes to chase effortlessly. And you just think, he looks like he's been playing in this league for years. He looks like he owns it already.
That's, I think, for me, my favourite part about his game. And of course, we've only seen one real competitive game, but it is his passing, the way he just sprays the ball about. The short pass as well. He's very quick. Like, he's thinking quicker than most people on the pitch. And it's going to take something for the Newcastle players to keep up with him, I think. And it's just going to be scary as well when he gets up to proper speed with the Premier League. Because if that's what he's performing like in his opening game, what's he going to be like in a few weeks' time when he's got more minutes under his belt?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we said earlier in the show, you look back to those America games. I mean, that Aston Villa game in pre-season, he was all at sea. Aston Villa's midfield were running through him. He was probably at fault for the first goal early on for Buendia. So, I mean, when I saw him starting on Saturday, I was surprised. I thought he'd be eased in like Bruno was last year, like Botman was to a degree last year. So, yeah, I think surprising is one of those words to use. I don't think anybody expected that so early.
Les says it just shows how much effort Tonali and the squad have put in. Performances like that aren't by accident. That alludes to the point about the fitness, which we'll get on to. Is Tonali, and again, which we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, and we all love Bruno. We will get on to Bruno later in the show. Is he, though, the best player in that squad? Because I look at him and the way he plays, maybe Isak aside, I just think if you were drawing levels, you might have a top tier potentially of just those two in it.
Look, it's too early, isn't it? I know we love to put sort of labels on like that, but I think it's too early. But I think everybody, yes, we're saying it's surprising that he's put that type of performance in so early, but actually, no one should really be surprised having watched him in Italy. No one should be surprised having watched him in, the Euros final, the Champions League semi-final and whatnot. He's been there and done it in Italy. He was signed, he isn't the record fee, but he's very close to it, to be one of the best players in the squad. Eddie Howe, very, very telling in his post-match press conference when we asked him about Tonali, and he said, I fell in love watching him in Italy, which is, quite a strong thing. Eddie Howe saw him playing Serie A and thought of Dan Ashworth, right, we need to go and get him. He's definitely been brought in to be one of those. Look, I don't know, is he better than Bruno? We could debate that till the cows come home. I'm sure the people in the comments will do that. But he's certainly going to be up there if he can, sort of carry on this early trajectory.
Graham says Tonali is pure class, an absolute maestro. I mean, the finish was absolutely superb. A lovely ball in, Botman knocking it down. It's Tonali flinging himself into kind of a half bicycle kick. But it's just a really good goal, and he could have had a second as well. Some really quick, slick movement down the left. And if it wasn't for Martinez with a brilliant save, it would have been 2 goals for him on his debut. But I think what a lot of people wondered about Tonali was, does he have that ability to add goals to his game? We know he's good with passing. We know he can get his foot into the opposition. But there was a question mark from some about the goals. but it's a perfect way to silence any doubters, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know, he did score a couple from set pieces last year, not too many from open play, and if they were, long range efforts. I haven't seen, I've watched plenty of compilations about him since we signed him, and there isn't too many goals where he scores in the 6-yard box like he did on Saturday. But I think what we saw Saturday, and like we say, it's early days, we're keeping our feet on the floor just to, don't have a go at us in the comments for, drifting off.
Right, Stuart's already in there. He says, yeah, we need to see how he develops. He's had one good game and now he's the best player in the squad. Consistency will... I agree. I apologise, Stuart.
But I think just off that one performance alone, and it is just one performance, it goes to show why all those early claims about him coming in to play the 6 role were quite wide of the mark. I don't want him sitting back in the 6. I want him everywhere like he was the other day, in that proper 8 role, all over the pitch like he was. And I think, as I said, it goes to show that he probably won't just be that player sitting behind and sit in front of the defence.
Let's say Tonali and Bruno isn't a contest. It's a partnership made in heaven. It's interesting that you mentioned the way they're set up across the 3, because all 3 of them, Joelinton, Bruno and Tonali, were up and down the pitch. Now, obviously you're saying 2-8 and a 6, but it didn't seem that rigid to me. I'm going to speak about Joelinton later in the show because I thought he was absolutely superb again. But it's going to be interesting going forward to see how it works because, like I said, I don't think they've been told you sit there, you sit there. Everyone kind of just works for each other. So if Bruno goes forward, one of them will step in, and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with you. I think it looked very fluid on Saturday. I think there was even points when, Newcastle were taking set pieces where actually Anthony Gordon was the man to drop out and sort of cover. There was a moment where Villa sprung a very early counter-attack and Gordon was the man to chase him back. So, they're interchanging, and I think, it's something that we haven't actually really touched on so far on the show. The options that they've got now in that midfield. I mean, as I said, I personally thought Longstaff would start if he was fit enough. Anderson, very, very unfortunate to miss out. People obviously were clamouring for Tonali. Willock's got to come back. Anderson can play, as we said. Gordon can drop in there. They've got real options now in the middle. And as you say, it's not just players that can, play attacking midfield. They're also doing the hard work, in behind as well.
Yeah, Anthony Q says, I think Tonali will be one of those players that brings everyone up enough. So when I said, is he the best player in the squad? That's kind of what I meant, because just watching him through pre-season and watching him on Saturday, and yes, it was one game, he just looks like a different class. Yeah. Again, yes, okay, we've got to see how he develops, but I don't think you'll look like that the way he did by accident. I think there's enough there to suggest that he'll maintain the levels that we saw against Villa. But hey, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
No, I agree with you. I think just performance aside, and we all know how well he played, I think we will probably start to see him go into this new leadership group that they formed. I think, he's only 23, but the way he commands that midfield, the way he gets in opponents' faces, the way he sort of deals with the referee, I think he's, going to become one of those leaders on the pitch, like sort of Joelinton has in the last couple of seasons.
Perfect segue. And let's talk about Joelinton, because I felt he went under the radar actually against Villa. I said a few weeks ago that I thought he was very nearly the complete midfielder. If he could add goals to his game, he's going to be in the kind of top 4 or 5 in the Premier League. And we're talking about Caicedo, 115 million. How much is Joelinton worth?
I mean, Chelsea have just blown the market apart now. If that's what they're paying for, as you say, Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, how much should Newcastle United be charging when Bruno is attracting offers, Joelinton is attracting offers, Isak down the line?
Not that Newcastle United are a selling club, by the way.
Yeah,
we're all going to stay on Tyneside. But yes, he went under the radar. He was absolutely everywhere on Saturday. And obviously everyone's talking about how good Tonali was, and quite rightly, because he was absolutely excellent. But again, I just think it allowed Joelinton to just get on with it. He was good going forward. He was going back and stopping the play, disrupting the play. There was one moment, I can't remember who it was against, but he tracked down the poor guy. And I honestly think the Villa player thought his world was coming to an end. You just had Joelinton like running towards him like a man possessed. That top performance from Joelinton, and I don't want to say it too often because we have said a lot on this podcast, but it's amazing to think of how far he's come. We're talking about options in midfield ahead of that Aston Villa game, and we weren't saying, well, many weren't saying Joelinton misses out.
No, I didn't see it.
Do you know what I mean? And it's amazing. And then what he's done on Saturday by proving a point, this is why I deserve to be in this side. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, it's funny because I remember when we used to do the podcast in that other room on there when I first started in this job and we started the Monday show, and I remember saying to you, can Joe Linton keep it up? Is he going to be a flash in the pan in the midfield? Are we going to be, talking about him dropping out the team? And that was probably 12 months ago to the day. And clearly he's been listening because he's proved all that he can stay there, and he is now. I mean, is he one of the first names on the team sheet? He can't be far off.
I think he is.
He can't be far off, can he?
And if these teams like Chelsea, and obviously they're going to go and sign Caicedo, but Liverpool, they're looking for a holding midfield. And I know Joe Linton strictly doesn't play as a holding midfielder if you were going to title him up like that, but he's got all the attributes of that, and then someone who can run forward. He'd be perfect for these big teams. But the point being as well, Newcastle are a big team. He's going nowhere, and they have got. And I guess the point is that when you're spending £150 million on someone like Caicedo, it shows you really just how fortunate Newcastle were to have a player like Joe Linton in their squad. Okay, Eddie Howe has had to work some magic on him, and it's been some turnaround, but he's arguably saved them £100 million, really.
Yeah, completely. And I think, Dan Ashworth always talks about this and the inflated fees. And, I think there's a reason why we haven't seen Newcastle go out and buy 190, 80 million pound players. And you actually look at the top 10 players that have cost the most in Premier League history, and actually a lot of them are duds. Probably Jack Grealish aside, and I mean, even that's early days for him. Newcastle don't want to be that club where they're spending 100 million on a player. They want to be signing players that are 30, 40 million. Bruno Guimaraes is the perfect example. 40 million pounds he came in for. And that when if you sell him further down the line, you're going to recoup 3 times that. And that's been their mantra, and they've stuck to it. And so far, I mean, I don't know how well it's far into the new era, and they still haven't really got anything wrong in the transfer market, but they haven't. That they're doing really smart business, and Tonali is proven the latest one of that.
Yeah, and there was a lot of talk in the build to the game about Newcastle's transfer business, and Jamie Carragher had his 2 pence worth about the signings that Newcastle have made, and do they excite fans or the Champions League signings? I mean, Sandro Tonali is just absolutely deflated that point from Jamie Carragher. And I like Jim Carragher. He's a very good punter. He's one of the best out there. But it just struck me as a very strange comment because, again, you're not really understanding what Newcastle are trying to achieve here. They're not going after the headline signings. They're not going, as you pointed out there, and spending hundreds of millions of pounds on players. What they're doing is they're targeting the right player rather than the one who thinks they're going to sell shirts, and they're not getting brought into the bidding wars. I mean, and you look at the business they've done. I mean, Dan Burn on Saturday. We're going to get onto the fact that they're reportedly after a left back on loan. But it's going to have to be some sign to get him out of the side. He was absolutely superb on Saturday. And then what did he cost? 8.5 million, 12 million, something like that. It's not about the price tag. And Dan Ashworth, Steve Nixon, Eddie Howe, they have to be given more credit for doing the hard work and spending sensibly. And I mean, the comments on Carragher just rattled me.
Yeah, Carragher's comments on, I think his point, his broader point was that they aren't flashy signings for, the so-called richest club in the world, bringing in Harvey Barnes from a relegated team, bringing in Tino Livramento for a relegated team. But actually, when you look at those deals, I mean, Tino Livramento, all being well, injuries aside, could be, the long-term heir to Kieran Trippier for the next decade. Harvey Barnes, by the way, is just a proven goal scorer, and there's no denying that at top level football. So they might not look flashy. I mean, Tonali obviously does. He's a big name. It was a big coup to get him in. But even then, you look at the fee, £55 million in today's market. That's what Southampton want for Lavia, who's 19. He's only really played top flight football for 2 years. You've got Tonali for the same price, who's played in Euros finals, Champions League semi-finals. He's won Serie A as a linchpin in that team. They're doing ridiculous business.
Carragher said, I don't think the type of signings that will make the rest of the Premier League go wow. It's like, but again,
that's what we like, under the
radar.
That's
not the point, you know what I mean? But it does get to a stage where you say, just before you make these sort of comments, right, actually look at what's happening here. Because you go to Eddie Howe and you say, right, are you trying to build a side that excites the rest of the Premier League? And he'd go, no. I'm trying to build a side that will do well in the Premier League, that will please the supporters here, but ultimately will work hard and be successful. And, excuse my French, he doesn't give a toss about the rest of the Premier League.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And it's comments like that which I just think just look a little bit deeper, and then you'll be able to give a more informed opinion.
And I think actually, if you look closer at home, which Carragher, as you say, he's a very good pundit. He usually does. He gets Newcastle fans. He speaks a lot about them. You look at the signings that Newcastle have made. I mean, there was a lot of excitement around Bruno. Tonali was very, very exciting for the fans. Not many people balked at the Harvey Barnes move. Livramento, yes, there's a few risks, but he's a very exciting deal. Newcastle fans have actually stood up and taken notice. Who cares that the rest of the league haven't? It doesn't really matter.
I'd rather be doing what Newcastle are doing than rather what Chelsea are doing. I had it written down to go on about it later in the show, and I just had Chelsea stop buying players. Like, what are you doing? Like, not because I want the players they're buying, just simply because it's just stupid now.
It just feels like every day you wake up and they're close to signing a brand new player. I mean,
it's ridiculous. We joked last week about having to extend the extension on the extension of the dressing room. They're going to have to extend that extension on that. It's ludicrous.
Yeah. I also, I mean, we haven't touched on it. I think the comments came after this last week, but sort of a little bit pleased to see Liverpool miss out on Caicedo. Jurgen Klopp pleading poverty, going to Southampton, trying to get a very cheap deal done for Lavia. Then suddenly finding £100 million back down the back of the sofa to try and sign Caicedo. And then, yeah, he goes to Chelsea.
We'll get on to Klopp later in the show, because I shouldn't let him get to his, but he's got under my skin. But equally, I think it's because Newcastle have got under his skin. But yeah, we'll get on to Klopp later in the show. But yeah, Joelinton, is he in the top 5 midfielders in the Premier League? Is that am I just on a wave of optimism today?
Oh, you've put me on the spot here because I'm trying to think of a midfielder. Look, I don't know. He's certainly up there. I think I've seen a lot of debates, and it's a very frivolous debate on Twitter because it's all subjective. But when you look at midfield threes and where they rank, Bruno, Joelinton, Tonali must be close to being the best you're going to get.
I was going to say, I mean, for most people watching, you'll then go, Andrew, well, that means there's only 2 other midfielders that can get in that top 5 because we've got Bruno and Tonali.
Exactly.
Tonali, see, I'm doing it myself. What a morning I'm having. Sean says, we're not here to be liked, we're here to be competing. I think that sums up the response to Mr. Carragher's quote. Gordon versus Barnes. Now, this was the other big debate. Who would start on the left? I said it would be Gordon. I did say it would be Gordon.
Did you?
I did. I said, if he had a storm of a week in training, which clearly he had.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be
it would be Gordon. And it's really funny because last week we said, Saturday, Gordon performs really well. Barnes on the Sunday grabs 2 goals, and it's like, wow, you've made Eddie Howe's decision even harder.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday gone, Anthony Gordon, you ask anyone up to the time Barnes came off the bench, Gordon was one of the best players on the pitch. Barnes comes off, grabs a goal. It's unbelievable to see these 2 players competing for that spot, and both of them can have a case to start. Both of them can feel aggrieved not to, but then both are taking the opportunity, whether it's 20 minutes, 10 minutes, to actually say, just to remind the manager, wait, I'm also very, very capable of starting in this 11.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you had Tonali, who obviously had a fantastic debut. Isak, who scored twice. Barnes, as you say, came off the bench, did very well. All these players performed really well, and actually, probably the player that I've seen get the most praise apart from Tonali is Anthony Gordon, and he only really got 1 assist. Tireless running, both forward and back. I mean, he made Matty Cash, who by all means is a very good fullback, he made him look League 1 or League 2 standard. He had him on toast. And I mean, I wrote about this on Sunday morning after the game. Anthony Gordon has done so well. He had a fantastic start to the season. He's carrying on this summer form, but actually, it won't be enough because you've got a ready-made goal scorer here in Harvey Barnes who is going to fight you for that place. And look, Gordon did fantastically well. Really, really good performance. But he's got Barnes really breathing down his neck now.
And as people have said there, obviously Barnes also had an assist. What I loved about Gordon's cross was left foot.
Yeah.
And we haven't, obviously he's come in and let's say he's replaced Anson Maximin for argument's sake on that flank. That point, is St. Maximin putting that ball in the box? I'm not too sure he is. I think he tries to take an extra touch. He maybe tries to go back onto the defender. Whereas Gordon, slick movement with Joelinton, isn't it? Ball back, bang, straight to Isak. Perfect.
Yeah.
Straight to Tonali. Absolutely perfect cross.
I think it's something that goes under the radar a bit with Gordon's game, just how 2-footed he is. I think when you look at Miggy on the other flank and how 1-footed he is, it really does sort of hammer home the fact that Gordon can use both. I think that's why, big reason why Eddie Howe signed him. Interesting to see whether him and Barnes both keep battling it out for that spot on the left, or whether he maybe moves one of them to the right. I mean, Barnes maybe hasn't played there, but Gordon we've seen can play anywhere. But yeah, I thought he was really good, really good. I'm glad because he's had a really tough time. He's grafted over the summer, and I think it was good to see so much praise put on him by fans after the game.
I've just got double-footed and then dancing, because I'm just so happy we've got a player who's got 2 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, if you're getting paid 30, 40,000, 50, 60,000 pounds a week, you need to be using both feet. It really frustrates us. And to see him, not even think about it, just put it in there with his left foot, even though his right foot's his stronger foot. It's the little things, but I was so happy.
No, yeah, absolutely. And as you said, I don't want to go too hard on Miggy, but that's the one gripe that you have from him, isn't it? Like, the amount of times you just want him to use his right foot and get it out, but he doesn't. He takes an extra touch, and yeah, very, very good from Gordon.
And defensively, he was good as well. Won 11 out of 19 duels. You always worried about Dan Burn being potentially exposed, especially against good players. And Villa have good players in that midfield who could have maybe got it at the fullbacks, but he did his job.
Yeah, he did, absolutely, and it's refreshing to see a player who, by the way, was signed as we all thought, that just this attack-minded player. He plays as a 10, he plays as a left winger. He's all about scoring goals, but actually, the work he's putting in off the ball is really, really good. He's tireless. You can tell, by the way, that he hasn't had a break this summer in terms of how fit he is. As I said, carrying on that form that he had in the under-21 Euros. Hopefully he can build on this. I remember we've obviously got City this weekend. I remember last season he got hooked against City. He started at the Etihad, I think, in one of his first games. He didn't really have a very good time of it. Just hope he builds on this now and rises to the challenge of Barnes sort of being in.
I think he will. For that point you've mentioned there, the fact he's got Barnes breathing down his neck, and you can't say more than what Barnes did, a goal and assist. Although I do have to say he should have had 2. I'd fine him for passing that ball. I'd fine him. Gets into training today. I hope Eddie Howe said, right, that you need to make a donation to the food bank. Why did he pass the ball? What is he doing?
For Wilson's goal or for the one that Wilson missed?
For the one Wilson missed.
Yeah.
He's got to be firing that in the back of the net.
Yeah. Was he thinking, well, it's worked once, it'll work again? I don't know. I'm glad, though, that when he took his goal, there was nothing else in his mind other than I'm putting this in the net.
I think
he got stung last time. He's not making the same mistake again. But I think, as you say, I think Gordon will rise to it. If Gordon, by the way, can start scoring goals, how on earth does Eddie Howe separate them? It's baffling.
That's interesting. It might go back to the point where you got to say, Miggy, you've got to start hitting the back of the net.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to competition and having players who are just very, very good. And because I think what you used to have players who could compete, but you always knew if someone came up against Alan St. Maximin, it was always likely to be Alan St. Maximin who would get the nod because he was the better player. But here you have players across the field who are all at a certain really high level. It's a toss-up in many positions. And do you know what? The team we saw against Villa, you wouldn't be surprised to see 2 or 3 changes against City.
And what I found really interesting was last week in the build-up to the Villa game was how many different teams I saw from fans. And I mean, we did a piece on the Chronicle about, who we thought would start. There was so many different opinions. As we've touched on, that massive battle on the left. We've touched on the fact that they've now got 6 or 7 options in the middle. If Fabian Schär hadn't been fit on Saturday, I think you would have had a couple of options as to what people want to do in defence. And that's before they actually go out and potentially sign one more defender. So, yeah, very, very positive. And Howe touched on it actually after the game. He said, I need these dilemmas. We're going to have 50, 60 games this season. I need to have these choices to make.
100%. Jolene says, Gordon did so well. He would kick a ball and sprint into another position. It's like having 2 players a year. He was fast and he was just straight to the point. Really good to see some fantastic build-up kind of work between him and Joe Linton and Tonali and Bruno. Like, everyone just seemed to be on the same wavelength.
Yeah, absolutely. Gordon especially. I think people say it about Barnes, and he was the master of the 1-2 at Leicester, and it was always his go-to move. He cuts inside, he gives it, he goes. But actually, Gordon is really, really good at that. He looks inside, he tries to find someone, and then, as Jolene says there, he's away and in behind. It's really, really positive.
And it is just one game. And
just a reminder, we're keeping our feet on the ground here.
Got a pound for every time we're going to say that. It is just one game, but has the ghost of Alan St. Maximin been put to rest?
Yeah, look, I think, Alan who? I think as I said, it was sad for sentimental reasons that he went, but Barnes is an upgrade. I mean, Harvey Barnes has played 20 minutes of football for Newcastle United in the Premier League, and he's matched Maxey's goal record in the Prem for last season. It says it all.
There you go. Wilson versus Isak. The other big debate. I said it would be Isak. We both said it would be
We
Isak.
both said it would be Isak,
I
yeah.
think it'll be Wilson on Saturday against City, actually.
Really?
I do.
I can't see that.
Isak just looks like a whole different level. I've said it's going to be Wilson, but I mean, Isak just unbelievable. Lovely finish for the first. But the second was just something else. And I just watch him play, and he's just an absolute delight.
It's hard to sum up how good he is, and I think finally other teams are starting to notice now, and other fans are starting to notice.
And yet they can't even stop him.
Exactly. I've got it written down here, and it's a piece that I'm probably going to write. Is he now that Harry Kane's gone, the second best striker in the Premier League behind Haaland?
Oof. Let us know in the comments.
Because I've written down some alternatives here from other clubs, and the four that I've got written down are Gabriel Jesus. I think I'd take Isak over Jesus and his dodgy knee. Alvarez at City. I think the jury's still out on that one. I've put Rashford down, but is Rashford a striker or is he more of a winger?
He's a midfielder on fantasy football.
Well, then that solves it. He's a midfielder, and obviously we haven't seen much of that Holland, who's going to play at Manchester United. I'm just looking around the other leagues. Chelsea don't seem to have a proper out-and-out striker. I know that Lukaku's going to go. I know that Jackson has been playing there. I think Isak behind Haaland is now the second best striker.
Not a bad point. I mean, Callum Wilson's better than some of them that you've mentioned.
You exactly. So, look, I just think I've just been talking about it in the office with an Arsenal fan, and he, made the point, and I'm sort of sick of saying it, but every week it becomes more and more true. He just looks like Thierry Henry. I mean, the way he strides with the ball, defenders can't get it off him. That dink over Martinez for a second,
just incredible. I do enjoy, though, you mentioning Jesus' knee injury there. I always enjoy when you mention a good old knee injury.
Why? I've actually been told in recent weeks that I've been mentioning my knee injury too much, so I'm gonna stop.
Are you?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not
after
this one. Yeah.
Sure.
So don't bring it up, please.
But yeah, just Isak, just world class, absolute world class. And again, he had his doubters, he had his critics. Can he score goals in the Premier League? He looks like he can score a boatload. And we said on the match preview, 20 plus goals this season. He's already two towards that. What was good to see, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, actually, I made myself a little bet before we started that I wouldn't say a certain word. I would say it once in the episode, right? And it's going to become a segment. It's going to become like, the word is refreshing. And it's going to be, what did I think was refreshing this week? And it's going to be one item because I got told I was saying refreshing too much. So what was refreshing this weekend? The most refreshing thing, Isak did not kick off when he got subbed off. Despite having 2 goals to his name, he would have wanted the third. You saw Mo Salah throwing his toys out the pram. Isak did not kick off, and that is refreshing. Everyone is just pulling in the same direction. It's not about the individual. It's about the team. It's about Newcastle. The clue's in the name. It's about Newcastle United. That, for me, was the refreshing element, the most refreshing thing of this whole entire weekend. And that's going to happen every week, ladies
We
and
need
gents.
the refresher segment, and we need the keeping the feet on the floor segment. I think that's what we need to start. Just on that, as I completely agree, very, very good to see that he wasn't kicking off. First, not that he ever would, I don't think. But it also shows the ruthlessness of Eddie Howe, because he did that last season with Wilson. Wilson was on 2 goals at home in the Premier League, and he took them off. And he's done the same with Isak. These players will be chasing hat-tricks, but they know they haven't got time to waste.
Could have had a hat-trick as well.
Good save by Martinez straight after his second goal. Look, I feel like, last season when we kept saying that we were just sick of talking about how good Bruno is. I think I'm just going to get to that stage with Isak because I just love him so much. I'm just going to get sick of saying how good he is, but he really is good. And we've spoke about, Tonali and how it was a good deal even at 55 million. Isak now is maybe starting to look like a bit of a bargain at 63 million. If you were, and I'm not saying they're going to, but if you were to sell him now, you'd get double that, I think.
Stop talking about selling Newcastle's
No, but I'm just making the point that they've bought really well and that they've bought smart and they've actually got bargains in, so that other clubs are going to be stiffing. Newcastle got some of the best players in the league.
You talk about that. We're talking about Casado. I didn't write down how much I had Joe Linton for. You reckon?
No. don't read that out.
Yeah, Isak, absolutely brilliant. And just a word, I mean, Martinez, he is an absolute wind-up merchant. Fantastic goalkeeper, because that scoreline could have been a heck of a lot worse if it wasn't for him.
They could have scored 8 or 9 really on the day. They had so many chances. As you say, Tonali and Isak both had really good chances straight after they scored. Very good save for that Wilson one, even though he should have absolutely buried it when Barnes squared it the second time. We haven't spoken about the Miggy foul.
It's coming.
And you text me on Saturday night when I saw it when I got home, and I didn't reply because I thought we'll save it for the pod because I think we're going to disagree on this.
I've had time to reflect.
Okay, so tell the viewers and the listeners what you initially texted me Saturday night about Martinez.
How on earth is that not a red card?
And have you changed your mind now?
I have.
Yeah, that for me, I think the yellow was right. I think there was defenders covering. He wasn't last man. The rules are the rules, but it was the most cynical foul you'll ever
I've only
see,
just because it only takes a quick little lob from you want to put that in the back of the net. I mean, it was he intended to bring him down. I also feel like he could have been sent off at any point during the game, because what we saw with the rule changes that the referees are meant to be giving out yellow cards and cautions when players are asking for their players to be booked or bit to say. I saw him at least asked twice for Newcastle players to be booked. Where was the second yellow for that? I mean, it doesn't matter now because Newcastle won, but I think very, very in the time he thought he was very fortunate, but looking back, there was probably a man covering, but the skin of his teeth, I think.
It was borderline, wasn't it? But I think it was the right decision, and I think Newcastle fans have sort of been split on it as well.
Yeah. Just on the whole, I mean, we'll talk later in the show about the whole technical area, because we've got the clip from Klopp. But on the whole, yellow cards, referees clamping down, what did you make of it? My first thought is, as it always is with the referees, is just consistency. Because I saw, was it Botman got a booking when Martinez brought Miggy down?
Yeah.
Because he was like, well, he's got to be off. And then there was another instance, I think someone asked for a yellow card.
Bruno.
Yeah. But there was instances where 2 or 3 Villa players were asking the same question of the referee and nothing happened. And I just think referees, I'm all for referees clamping down on dissent, and you don't want to see other players asking other players to be cautioned. But the consistency is what kills your belief in officials. It happens with the VAR. It happens on the pitch, happens down at Stockley Park. They need to be consistent. Otherwise, what's the point?
If I'm completely honest, I didn't think Andy Madley had that good of a game on Saturday.
He was awful.
It didn't matter, did it? Because of the result and how clear cut it was in the end. But as you say, Botman booked in the first half for complaining about the Martinez foul. Bruno watched Tonali get rugby tackled to the floor, asked for a card and got booked himself. Tonali actually got booked when he got subbed for taking too long to go off. But the goal had just been scored, so both players were going back to the centre circle. Tonali's slowly walking off and he gets a card. There was just no consistency. And by the way, Matty Cash, it took 4 really bad fouls on Anthony Gordon before he got a yellow. He could have been booked once or twice in the first half there. I didn't think the ref had a good game at all.
He had an awful game. We don't want to hit on referees because it's a difficult game, but he lost control of that game very early on. And not just from a Newcastle perspective, both sides, there were decisions going against both sides, but I just thought, I was sitting there just thinking, what on earth is he doing? And he lost control of it. If we're rating it, I'm going to 2 out of 10 performance from a referee, and I thought it was really, really poor.
Yeah, thankfully it didn't matter, and thankfully it hasn't even really been a talking point. I mean, that I've hardly heard anybody talking about that Martinez decision because of how well Newcastle sort of saw out the game. It didn't matter, but I'm with you. I'm happy for refs to clamp down, but I think this asking for a yellow card thing is a yellow card for that not too strong.
Well, someone mentioned there the way the yellow cards are getting handed out. Graham says it's fair to say squad depth will be invaluable.
It's true, yeah, absolutely. I think if Bruno and Tonali and Botman have all picked up yellows in their first game for, essentially not doing anything, it is. We're going to see a lot more suspensions, I think.
Did you notice Kieran Trippier's reaction when Botman got booked?
No,
he was absolutely fizzing at Botman.
Was he?
He was raging. I thought Trippier was going to get booked for knocking out his own centre back. He was like pushing away, and Botman came again. He was raging. Then at half time, he had to push him away again.
They're gonna have to learn though. I think
leadership.
That's probably what Trippier's saying. That the players are going to have to learn because the refs have made that decision now. But I even saw Eddie Howe asking the referee when Tonali got booked, the players are literally lining back up for kickoff. It's not as if Tonali's, you know what I mean? Players are going to have to get used to it, though, just like Howe and Tindall are going to have to get used to the touchline rule.
Indeed, we do have to. Well, we don't talk about Bruno. I did plan to sing in the introduction, but I think I've done enough singing for one episode.
Maybe.
But sadly, we're going to have to talk about Bruno.
Okay.
Because I thought it was one of his worst games in a black and white shirt.
Really?
He had one or two moments with great passing. There was, I think, one or two good runs forward. But as a whole, based on what we've come to expect from him, I thought it was a really poor performance. He was very slow when he was in possession. There was a few times he got caught in possession. He drew a foul, questionable fouls. I thought he was quite fortunate, actually. I would have hooked him earlier. Obviously with the booking, but I just thought his performance levels had dropped. And I don't think he's the same player we've come to expect because he set his standards so high. I do wonder, because he played through the injury, whether that's impacted him more than if he just not played through it and just said, I can't play. Let me recover these 3 months and I'll be afresh in the summer, which of course would have affected Newcastle's chance of top 4 football. So, but I just want to see the old Bruno bounce back because he's a tremendous player. And we saw on Saturday the glimpses of how good he is. But I thought as a whole, he was the worst of that midfield three. And it wasn't a good performance in my opinion. I'd
be interested to know what the viewers watching now live think about this, because for me, I mean, look, I don't think he played bad. I think it's very, very hard, isn't it, when you someone like Bruno, who's used to being the star man, and then all of a sudden we've just spent 20 minutes talking about Tonali and how good he was, and we've just spent another 10 minutes talking about how good Joelinton was. I think I agree he was the worst of the midfield three, but I think they set a very high bar. Look, we've just been talking about how we need to keep the feet on the ground. We need to remember it's also still technically pre-season. I mean, players aren't at their ultimate fitness.
But on that, Newcastle United look like they actually are.
Yeah,
it's scary.
Yeah, it does. But I think another thing we talked about watching Tonali in America, I think it was also obvious that Bruno maybe isn't fully up to speed yet. Give him another couple of weeks. I mean, I know it's a tough ask, City and Liverpool back to back, but nothing to worry about. I thought he did okay.
Sean says he was fine. Thought playing him as a 6 was the best option. Graham says, I think Bruno has been off the pace for a while, passing a bit off and missing, just hasn't got going, but he has high standards, maybe showing us he's all human. And Graham says, high bar first game is all. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Graham, Mighty Win says he agrees with me. I've been worried about Bruno for a while. I think he'll get back to where he was last season. It's just noticeable because of how good he was last season.
It's going to be interesting as well, because Bruno, ever since he joined, and I'm talking for the full 80 months, has been the main man. And he's had to come off that pitch on Saturday and go on social media and see all his old Newcastle fans suddenly, Tonali's the new man.
I think he'll love that. I think he'll be all right with that. Christopher says, I think Bruno played very well. Steven says, Bruno did okay. I think the Tonali sign has taken a lot of the onus off everything, having to go through Bruno, which is what Newcastle United needed and what Newcastle United wanted. And I'm sure we will see the best of Bruno in the weeks to come. Just before we crack on with some transfer news, our live event tickets are still available. August 30th. We've got a very special guest added to the bill. Sir John Hall, former Newcastle United owner, will be on the panel alongside BBC Newcastle's Matthew Raisbeck, Henry Winter of the Times, and our Chronicle panel made up of Aaron, Kieran Kelly, and Lee Ryers. Tickets are still available. £10 a ticket. I'll pop the link to where you can get them into the comments. Tyneside Irish Centre at 7:30. Hopefully you can come along. There's a big debate going on about Bruno. John says Bruno played well. It's getting ridiculous now. All matter of opinion, John. We've got Wayne saying, I agree. Bruno was very sloppy in control of the ball. Seemed to fall over very easy, expecting a foul. He lost possession lots of times. Derek says, don't think we need to worry about Bruno. I didn't even think we got out of first gear against Villa. Exciting to think how much better we will become. And that's the point I want to just talk about before we do get to transfers. The thing above all else that stood out for me on Saturday was just how fit they look.
Yeah.
Just like, it looks like they've never stopped. I joked a few months ago that I'd love to spend a morning in their kind of pre-season training regime, because I bet it's a lot of bleep tests up and down. You must have them doing laps of the town moor.
Yeah, I think when they first came back to pre-season and they got back to Benton for the first day, Eddie Howe did an interview and he said they've came back the fittest that I've seen them. Now, if that was after their holidays, before an Eddie Howe pre-season, it's no wonder they're playing, so well late in the game. And I think Eddie Howe mentioned it after the second Cellar Cup game. When Harvey Barnes scored us 2, they were very late on. They were killing teams off. And I think when you look at how long the games are going to go on this season with all the stoppage time, and I mean, it's 105 minutes played on Saturday with the 10 and the 5 added on. Newcastle are really going to need to dig deep later on. And I think the fact that they're actually showing some of their best work late in the game is going to be a real asset for them this season.
It's going to set them apart, I think.
Yeah.
Like, everyone was talking about how well Villa will do this season, how Villa will be the one to upset the established order. Based on that, their streets apart. But I think it does come down to the stamina that Newcastle United have got. And obviously the hard work. Tactically, everyone just slots in where they need to do when the changes are made. But everyone just looks so fit.
Yeah, they do. And I think also one thing that we haven't actually touched on is the strength of that bench on Saturday.
Yeah.
Barnes, Wilson, 31 goals between them alone last season. Murphy, Anderson, Livramento, if you want to, throw someone on at full back. That talent now coming off the bench with Willock to come back is going to set Newcastle apart. Everybody just talks about, bloody hell, look at City's bench. It could win the league by itself. You look at Newcastle's bench now, and actually when you've got players like Barnes and Wilson coming on, it gives them a huge advantage. I mean, to bring those two on at 3-1, it's huge for Howe.
Just keep your feet on the ground.
Yeah, I'm not saying Newcastle's bench can win the league yet.
Sam Mulliner, friend of the podcast, special host at times, says, our midfield of Joe Linton, Tonali, Bruno is one of the best in Europe. Bring on anyone in the Champions League at St James's Park. He's on a very high. Chris says, we made Villa look very average at times. The Howe effect is already on show with the new signings. Yeah, Newcastle just absolutely smashed Villa to pieces. Brilliant to see. If you were Elliot Anderson, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking you're 20 years old, your time will come, you'll get your chance this season. It's very disappointing because in some respects you feel like he couldn't have done anything else in pre-season to get a start. I mean, he was, inch perfect pretty much every time he played. But, we did sort of ask Howe about this, not about Anderson specifically, but we asked about the strength and depth. And Howe's response was they'll all get their chance. And I think that needs to be the message for Anderson and the others.
And there was a really nice quote from Eddie Howe after the game when he was asked about making substitutions. And he said, my intention always when winning is not to sit back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that is the right way to defend. That is just music to the ears of Newcastle United fans, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, as I've just touched on, 3-1 up at home to Villa. The game's all but dead. And, Eddie Howe goes for the jugular. He's not content on just sitting back and resting on his laurels.
Indeed. And to do it to a side, as I said, that many people tipped for big things. And of course, like we say, I'm going to say again, it's only the first game. And I was listening to BBC 5 Live on yesterday, actually, and there was a few professionals. And it was actually the Aston Villa women's captain was a guest. Mm-hmm. Can't quite remember who the other person on was. But Steve Crossman said, well, when you lose like that, 5-1, after being talked up the entirety of the summer, what are you thinking? And she said, sorry, I can't remember her name. She said, well, you're not too worried. Outside, people are, oh, what a mess, what a chaos. But you're not too worried. And it's the same when you win as well. You got to just kind of keep everything low. You've won 5-1. Don't get ahead of yourself. You've lost 5-1. It's not a massive deal because you know what you've been working upon. And I suppose that's what Eddie Howe will be looking at. He'll be over the moon, having scored 5 goals, but he's got a big test on Saturday coming, and you're only as good as your next win.
I think, it was telling Emery came out after the presser, and he sort of said that he didn't actually think Villa played too bad, and I sort of agree with him. I think until that second Isak goal went in, it was a very, very tight game. I think that third goal just killed it. Villa, obviously, I mean, it's early days. You can't read too much in the first game of the season. They lose Mings in the first half. Torres looks all at sea. As I said, then Isak, capitalizes on a mistake at the back. On another day, that would have been a lot. It would have been a tighter scoreline, wouldn't it? And then Eddie Howe, as you just said, was very much, he was even asked in the presser by one journalist, does it mean much being top of the league at the stage? And he said, we've got City on Saturday. If any game is going to bring you back to down to earth, it's City at the Etihad. So we'll see where they are in a couple of weeks. We can know more. Villa, I'm sure, will come back, but it was a very, very good start for Newcastle.
It was indeed. And yeah, I mean, your man, Mr. Diaby.
Yeah.
He looked very good. What a nice little finish that was.
Lovely finish. His movement in behind looks ridiculous. He was playing some lovely 1-2s. There's still a big part of me that would just love Newcastle to have signed him. And I thought he was probably the standout player in the first half for Villa. But look, Harvey Barnes can do just whatever Diaby does. So
as can Miguel Almiron as well. New left back then. We mentioned this back in June. The interest in Mark Cucurella from Chelsea, and we've known about the long-term interest in Kieran Tierney. We've also known, or I felt that the loan market would play a huge part to the end of the transfer window as Newcastle try and be really clever with the budgets. Now, to get either of these on loan is going to take something special, a lot of persuading the clubs to let them go because it's going to a direct rival. My first question is, because I think I asked you back in June and you picked Cucurella over Tierney. My first question today is, Dan Burn was superb. Do we need another left back? Because it's going to take someone very special to unseat Dan Burn. And if someone's coming in just to play back up to Dan Burn, then does Matt Target not do that?
Yeah, funnily enough, I actually wrote a piece on this for this morning, and it was more aimed at Fabian Schär. But I was sat watching the game on Saturday, and I actually thought it's no surprise that Howe wants one more. You look at that team; it's very balanced, strong bench now. You can't really argue that they probably do need one more in at defensive cover, but I would like it to be cover. I would like it to be a young player who can learn from Schär, who can learn from Burn. I think you look at that team; it's very, very settled. And I know I've probably spent all summer saying they need to go out and get a left back, but I do agree. I think Burn, maybe doesn't get the credit he deserves. He maybe goes under the radar a bit because he's not flashy, and he sort of moved into that position. Even though he's a centre back, I would like to see one more come in as cover. As we said, there's 2 reports this morning that they're after Cucurella and Tierney, who would probably think fully fit and firing come into the starting 11. Be interesting to see where they go with those 2.
Rico Henry. I keep mentioning him. Did you watch him against Spurs?
Yeah, I saw the first half of the game. He's very, very good.
Absolutely brilliant. Because if you're going to go and sign a left back, why are you paying some? Because let's not be on the bush. Cucurella, Tierney will be on a big wage. Yeah. Probably a big loan fee as well. Nothing to say there'd be a signing on fee, for the summer if it goes well. If you want a new left back, go and buy someone. I know with budgets and whatever, but go and buy someone that can actually unseat Dan Burn. Mm-hmm. And I get what you're saying. I like to be back up, but I just think if there's been enough debate and enough worry from people to suggest a left back is still a priority, then go out and buy someone. Buy someone who's young enough as well to really lay down a marker and just rival Dan Burn for that position.
Yeah, I mean, just on that, I think I did probably say to you earlier in the summer that it was Cucurella over Tierney for me. I think that still stands. But there's a big question mark over Cucurella because, yes, let's write off what Chelsea did last season. They were an absolute mess. If you can get him anywhere, near what he was like at Brighton, I think it's a no-brainer. But, there's no guarantee that they would do that. Tierney, he went through last season without an injury, but I was looking at his record this morning. A lot of knee problems over the years, some ankle issues. He missed, I think he's had 9 or 10 separate injuries in the last 6 or 7 years. Came on the Community Shield, was at fault for the goal, didn't do himself too much glory, was completely left out the squad on Saturday. There's risks attached to both of them. And I think they'll probably split opinion among fans as well.
Ethan says, wouldn't go near Cucurella. Gary says, been impressed with Rico Henry the last couple of seasons. And Graham says, left back needed. Yes, Burn is good, done very little wrong, but we don't get much from left back in delivery and crosses in the same way we get from right back. Someone sitting behind me, St. James Park, she did say we do need a left back who can whip the ball into the box. Given that we think they're going to aim for the low market in that area, where does that leave the rest of the budget to be spent? Is it a centre back? Is that where we still believe it's going to be?
Look, from what Eddie Howe says, it's one more, and I think he talked last week about being creative. I think one more means one more, whether it's a loan or not. Obviously, we know this can change. We saw it last summer with Callum Wilson getting injured, and Isak had to come in because they're short. Touch wood. But if Schär and Botman get an injury within the next couple of weeks, you can see them going out and saying, right, we've got to go out and splash the cash on a centre back. There is money there to be spent. They just don't feel like they need to spend it at the moment on another, starting player. But I think it's one more.
Got enough for midfield, you would argue.
Yeah, more than enough.
I'd still like. I think it's like, I don't think they'll get them. So yeah, you can young centre back. I mean, someone's asked in the comments there about Alex Murphy, but I think he'll probably go out on loan before the window closes up. It's going to be interesting. Yeah, I'm not.
But funnily enough, and I wouldn't say Tierney and Cucurella are really those players, even though they've both played centre back in their time. It's more so when there's three at the back and they're sort of playing out on the left. If you can find someone like Burn and Murphy in the sense that they can play centre back and left back, then I think that's the way to go between now and September.
Versatility is key. Right, ladies and gents, shall we hear from Mr. Jurgen Klopp? He had a little dig at Newcastle United with regards to the new rules to the technical area. This is what he had to say after the draw with Chelsea on Sunday.
The fourth official policing where one coach can go forward each time. Do you understand that rule?
Yeah, it's in the Champions League like that anyway. I think it's only for one team a real problem. Newcastle. Sorry. No, it was obviously we have first team coaches, we have assistants, and they are all lively, and it's absolutely fine, and we get up. We have just to get used to it a bit around the set piece. Pete Kravitz, we got up, and then the fourth official told me, you cannot say, okay, what happens if I sit down? Yeah, then you can. Yeah, we're going to sit down. It's absolutely fine. So we need to get used to it, but it's fine.
Thank you, everyone.
Welcome. See you. Bye-bye.
He's rattled, man. Absolutely rattled. Do you know what? The sorry in that bit there. How arrogant of the man. How absolutely arrogant.
I read those quotes last night on Twitter, and I read them without seeing the clip, and I thought, oh my God, he is so rattled. He hates Newcastle United. But watching it this morning, I can see that's very more tongue-in-cheek than I think it was.
I don't know.
Across.
I think there's always an ulterior motive when it comes to Mr. Klopp.
I think, look, I don't want to defend Klopp too much after his recent antics, but I think it's a bit tongue in cheek. But you know what it is? It's actually made me really excited to play them in a couple of weeks' time because I think it'll be fiery.
Yeah,
and I would love Jason Tyndall to just stand just an inch outside the technical area for the full game, just to rattle Klopp.
It's an utterly ridiculous rule. But do you know what? I genuinely, I think there's more to it. Newcastle on our force a few years ago, you wouldn't even hear Klopp mention Newcastle because they were just a joke under the previous owner. But he knows, despite him raising his own ceiling by several floors, Newcastle are going to push his Liverpool side all the way for Champions League football. So it's countless digs. Or is it a distraction tactic?
Yeah,
he is the master of it.
Look, yeah, I think there might not have been too much behind that dig yesterday, but I think there certainly has been over the last couple of months. I think not helped by the clash at Anfield last August when there was all that, talk about time waste, and that was where it all really started for Newcastle United. He was the man that, first planted the seed that Newcastle are this great time wasting team, which we know they aren't. The ceiling comment obviously angered a lot of people, rightly so, given that Liverpool have just tried to break the Premier League transfer record and failed miserably. Like I say, I'm just looking forward to a spicy clash in 2 weeks' time at St James's.
It's certainly going to be interesting. End of the month, as I said, I did have written down there, Chelsea stop buying players because you're like football manager, absolutely crazy. But I think it'll help Newcastle, the chaotic nature of the way that they're adding to the squad. I don't think that's going to help dampen the fires of last year when there was just a total disunity across the whole entire training ground. I mean, Elise is a very good player, be a very good signing.
Yeah.
But look, stop buying players, man. Stop it. Right. Trivia time. Definitely the jingle there, don't I? Are you ready for some trivia?
I'm ready for some trivia.
Are you ready for some trivia? So, Newcastle won on the opening day of the season, and I've got some previous wins that have marked the start of the Premier League campaign. I'll give you the game, the date, and the result.
Right.
And I want you to name just one of the Newcastle United scorers.
Brilliant.
So I'm going to take my pen off you, which you've chewed to the end of the earth and back. Fantastic. Newcastle United 4, West Ham 0, 2002-2003 at St James's Park. Just want one of the scorers. Shearer. I mean, when it's that era, it's quite easy, isn't it?
Well, I hope they're all this easy, Jesus.
Luar got 2, and Barcelona got the other. Newcastle United 3-1 against Bolton at the Reebok 2007. Sam Allardyce's first game in charge.
Martins.
Yeah. Got a double. Want to have a go at the other scorer?
No.
Charles Nzogbia. West Ham away. They won 2-0. And it was the 2017-18 season. I realize I've not written the dates down for the last three, which is a fantastic way to do this trivia. But 2-0 away. Two scorers on their debut, funnily enough.
For some reason, I feel like, did they not win 3-0? Was that not the first game of the season? I want to say Joselu. No, I'm thinking of a different game when they were beaten 3-0 at home. Sorry, what was the season?
I think it was 2018-19. Steve Bruce season, I think. Yeah, Steve Bruce's first season.
18-19. We'll go for... Bloody hell, where's my mind gone blank?
You want me to give you the names?
No, I'm for some reason my mind's just completely gone. Who on earth played up front when Steve Bruce was there?
One still plays up front.
That
That is literally the easiest clue in the world.
Callum Wilson.
Callum Wilson and Jeff Hendrick got the goals. Next, we have Coventry up at St James's Park. They were beaten 3-0 by Newcastle United in 1995. It's another debut goal for a certain somebody.
Ferdinand.
It was Rob Lee and Peter Beardsley with the other one. This is the Les Ferdinand goal, which I really, really enjoyed. Outpaced the keeper and put it away from a difficult angle. And number 5 beat Spurs 2-1 at home, kicking off the 2012-2013 season. Can you name one of the scorers?
Who was it? Sorry, Spurs.
Spurs at home, 2012-2013 season.
Cisse.
No.
Perez.
No. Shall I put you out of your misery?
Yeah, go on.
Hatton Ben Arfa and Demba Ba. There you go.
Yeah, I tell you what, that is not many opening day wins, is it? In what, 25
I think there was probably more. They were just the 5. I mean, because I didn't mention Fabian Schär scoring against Forest. So there was probably more. I just thought I'd pick the ones you had a slight chance of getting to. But saying that, actually, that Coventry game was 1995. I think 14th of August, 1995. So you would have been...
-1.
-1.
Good going, that I got it right, yeah.
You did. This has been the Everything is Black and White podcast, the Monday show with me, Andrew Musgrove, and Newcastle United editor Aaron Stokes. We do appreciate you guys join us. If you're on YouTube, give this video a thumbs up and hit subscribe. If you're on a podcast channel, we appreciate you tuning in. As always, leave us a rating and review and share the pod amongst your Newcastle United supporting friends and family. Remember to get your tickets for our live event with Sir John Hall and our expert Newcastle United panel. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle news, and from myself and Aaron, we'll see you guys very soon.